Let's wish a big Virgin Radio welcome to a band that have sold millions upon millions of records and have had 2 American album Billboard #1s, and that's probably why Liam Gallagher slags them off, because he's jealous of Mumford and Sons.
We're jealous of him.
Oh, well, double jealousy going on. Okay, well, at least that makes it. At least there's some equality there. Well, so, chaps, I want to go through your whole album, if that's okay with you.
Yes, Eddie.
But before we do that, let's just get a little context to it before we dive in. So, rewind your minds back to when the album was just a blank piece of paper. At that point, what did you want it to be?
I think in many ways this album began the day we finished Wilder Mind. We knew at that point we were definitely going to be making another record. And sometimes when you finish a process you feel like that was such an ordeal that maybe we wouldn't do it again. But with Wilder Mind it was a very positive experience, and I think we felt like we had almost really fallen back in love and felt very sort of emancipated in our creativity. And a lot of that was down to James Ford on that record, and I think looking ahead from that point, to various degrees, we each kind of went off and started just writing a lot more, and then over the course of 3 years we amassed a pretty large amount of songs. So that kind of blank page moment wasn't kind of triggered by anything other than being inspired by what we had done before, really.
It's lovely hearing when you hear a musician say the word love about what they're doing, you know, because that's what it all boils down to. Interesting, you mentioned James Ford, mutual friend,
right.
old pal. You know, I loved Simeon, his first band. I absolutely loved them. Gave them their first play.
Amazing.
Oh, really?
And
cool.
So, is your new producer another mutual friend? Is it Eppo? Is it Paul Epworth? That is. Yeah. So Paul, because I knew he'd done 1 or 2 tracks. Has he done the whole record?
Yeah, the whole thing. And some more to spare. Yeah.
Oh, amazing! And so, how was that? I mean,
How do you know him?
Well, because I started. I mean,
Same time.
I guess. I mean, I was a massive Phones fan. You know, his remix moniker, and obviously I knew him from he had a studio opposite where I lived, East Coast, where he used to work in East Coast studio, and I was the first place I ever bought was right opposite East Coast Studios.
Well, he was a live touring engineer before that.
So that's right, yeah, that's right. You know, I knew he was a front of house guy, but it was, you know, after he started producing Block Party and all of those guys, and he started doing all these Phones remixes of these tracks, and of course I'm kind of was the remix guy, and I got to know him through that, and then he ended up producing Silence for me. We did a cover of John Cage's 433.
Amazing. Haven't heard about this.
I'll go listen to all of this when I get home.
Go listen to the cover of Silence. Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I know Paul. I absolutely love the guy. So, and I know we all know how talented he is. You know, incredible, and it has worked from everyone from Adele to Friendly Fires.
Yeah.
So how has that experience for you?
Well, actually, it's funny that you say Adele and Friendly Fires, because I think why he was such a good fit for Mumford & Sons was that he's capable of doing big pop stuff like Adele and bands. And I think that, and like indie band, I guess. So within Mumford & Sons, I think there is that. There's Ben writes incredible epic songs, and Marcus does the same. But we also have songs which are, you know, tight indie, more indie bands, you know, so kind of that spectrum exists within Mumford & Sons, and he can do both and everything in between.
Did he push you out of your comfort zone? It felt to me there's a couple of few songs in the middle of the record that really resonated with me, that I absolutely love, and it felt to me like you were being, I mean, we're going to get to this later, but it felt to me like you were being gently persuaded out of your comfort zone, which I think is an incredibly healthy thing to do creatively.
Yeah, I mean, I think he really built the trust very quickly. We trusted him because of his career and his reputation, but there's just something. He's amazingly strong but soft simultaneously in his character, And we need that. I think that we kind of look towards someone to give us that, I guess, objective, democratic voice amongst the four of us that can actually just reflect back and push us all, rather than pushing just a couple of us. And he did that out the gate. And actually we tried out a couple of things with him before we committed to doing a whole album with him. And this was probably about 14 months ago now. Yeah, a year to 14 months ago. And we went in and we did the song Slip Away. And we just felt like that song went on such a journey in the course of 24 hours. And he just constantly told us, like, don't worry about it, don't think, don't worry about the demo, don't worry about what it's gonna sound like, just trust me. And we were really happy. It was like 2 days later and we had a track that we thought, well, this is an exciting new sound. And we just followed him a little bit. And the more that we followed him, the more we enjoyed the direction we were going in.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It comes across. It seems to me like Mumford and Sons is almost beyond a band. It's almost like a way of life. Like you come at things in a very holistic way, don't you? Like you're not just a band, but there's a label that's attached to one of you. Is it you, Ben?
Yeah, I've got a label, but we've also got a thing called Gentlemen of the Road, which is like our broader concept. Does everything from festivals. We have actually released records. We did the second Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros album on that. And it's funny, like, a way of life makes it seem like a lifestyle brand, which it's not. It's more like an approach that I think we all came upon, and that applies to when we're making music together. But also it applies to, I guess, yeah, a broader spectrum of things.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a festival. You kind of have a festival,
Yeah.
and you've got your label. You've got the O'Meara, my favourite venue. I mean, there is no better sounding venue.
Agreed.
And looking even, it just looks like an old-fashioned Punch and Judy show, but blown up massively. I absolutely love it. And
Ben deserves great credit for that. And that's not a Mumford & Sons, that's a Ben Lovett and his great team at O'Meara around the corner from here.
Right.
That's no credit to Mumford & Sons at all. Very
Really?
much this guy.
That's totally Ben.
Yeah.
Well,
And we're all in awe of him. I'm very impressed and proud.
It's been amazing, actually. It's a relatively new project, and there's been so much support within the band, and I think we've kind of grown. There's a lot of other bits that we haven't done together, and I think that over the years, as we're now like, we'll just get into our 30s, it's like I certainly feel a lot more just genuine kind of support and encouragement about that stuff, and I think that's so important for our ability to do what we do together, is that we're also encouraged to do what we do apart. It's like we always say it's like a marriage, Mumford & Sons. It's like an ability to not kind of put a line around the whole thing and say it's just who we are as a band, and anything beyond that is kind of seen as the other, and therefore it's a bit scary and a bit different. We always, like, if someone wants to go and work on something that's out of the box, whether it be Marcus went and did that Basement Tapes project in LA, and Winston spent a year touring most recently with this Austrian duo called HVOB, and I think that there's just a genuine interest in other people's interests, and I think that's going to mean we do this for a long time. That's
really lovely. It's very brotherly, because there are some bands where things like that instigate jealousy.
Right,
whereas with you guys, it's support and love. That's a very genuinely heartwarming thing.
Right.
Maybe that's why I'm just now thinking that's, you cracked America, because you genuinely like hanging out. You genuinely like each other. I think with a band like Oasis could never crack America, because they, half of them hated each other.
They were actually brothers.
Yeah, and the irony is that they're actually brothers.
Sorry.
Can I ask you about your relationship with your old songs? There are some bands who are like, fed up with those songs and just want to do the new stuff. We've talked about the love that you have for each other and for what you do. Is there a love for? Does your love for the old songs reflect your fans' love for the old songs? And when you play live, you know, is there still a real love for the old songs?
Definitely playing live, and not just old songs, new songs. When you play a song, you hear it through the people you're playing it to, and actually that, I'll get to that, but it corresponds to this, making this album, because we as a band grew up playing these songs, and they were evolved live, playing around pubs around the country, and then we got to, this section's not working, we're losing the crowd here, we need to put in a pre-chorus or something like that, and the songs would evolve like that. And then when we came to making Wild and Mind, YouTube existed. It didn't exist before then, so we didn't want those songs to exist online unfinished, so we kind of didn't play any of them live. And I think that we've evolved now to realise we need people to listen to these songs so that we can hear them differently. So we've brought loads of people into the studio. So that's how it applied to the new songs. But for the old songs, definitely hearing it, you know, we're not singing at home, play them to ourselves. We have to hear them through the ears of the crowd at gigs, and it definitely injects like love into them. It would be very boring to play them again and again, I think. Maybe not.
To no one. I couldn't imagine why we would do that.
So when you're playing live,
but Marcus and Ted, by the way, right now are just at home playing
the old
songs. Yeah. So they couldn't make it.
Obviously, the fans probably love, singles, don't they? And like, are there? What are the? Can you pinpoint a couple of old songs that you really love that just get you going every time when you play them live?
Well, I'll talk about this moment we had the other day. We were working up. We just put "If I Say" out as the second song out off this album, and we were messing around with that in rehearsals. We were in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, of all places, for 5 days. It was a pretty nice place, actually, and we were just kind of, I don't know. I think Marcus was goofing around a bit, and then we started playing it was in the same key as this old song called "I Gave You All." And it just felt great to play it again, because that was a song that wasn't quite cutting through in our live set, because people did want to hear The Cave and Little Lion Man. But actually, you resurrect some of these songs that we haven't played for a while, and it just was like, cool. This is like, it felt fresh. There is a sense that you can put on that same jacket too many times, that you do, like, you need to put it back in the closet for a minute.
Yeah.
But we don't necessarily have the full jurisdiction to make those decisions. I think there's we have a sense of duty a little bit when it comes to touring, that we like to go out there and serve the songs and serve the show, and it's not just about us. So, like, we've got to go out there and play people what they came to see, and part of that is actually enjoyable. Not, there's a selflessness to that. Then we enjoy their reaction to the song, and we suddenly end up in this like positive feedback loop.
We have something in common, which is that we are both Pearl Jam fans. We are all Pearl Jam fans.
Awesome.
I saw that moment when you were headlining a festival just the other day, I think it was.
Yeah.
And you got Eddie Vedder to come up on stage and do it.
It was Eddy's festival.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
It was Eddie's festival.
Yeah.
And you did a Bob Dylan song together?
All Along the Watchtower.
Oh my gosh.
15-minute version.
Oh my gosh. How did that?
Awesome.
Yeah. Just talk me through that, because what a moment that must have been.
Well, he invited us to play his festival. I think it's his 4th year. Yeah. And I don't know if is it moving, or does he do it in the same place every year?
I think it's stuck in that point now, in Laguna Beach in California.
So it's near San Diego, and he invited us to play. We bang up for it, and it was a bit of a whirlwind, wasn't it? And
it's a whirlwind, yeah. I think he got the idea of that song because we first met at Neil Young's Bridge School benefit that he does up in San Francisco, just outside of San Francisco, and there was a cover of that song done that year, and I think it's a really good song to jam out because you don't need to rehearse it. We literally didn't even run it once before going out and playing it in front of 50,000 people. Yeah.
You winged it.
We winged it. We fully winged it. And then he was like throwing. I remember, like I said this to Win afterwards, but one of my favourite moments ever happened that night when I looked over and I saw Win in like the depths of kind of rock god electric guitar solo with Eddie Vedder just like pouring like eye contact into him, and I looked over across the stage and saw that happening. I was like, what is going on in our life where you got Eddie and Winston rocking out in this like beachside festival? Yeah,
there are weird moments, aren't there?
Yeah, there's some really good times.
You're not supposed to meet your childhood heroes or
no.
anything like
Well,
that.
well, I mean, there's an old, not an old wives' tale, an old adage of never meet your heroes. But I found all my heroes to be absolutely freaking lovely,
Absolutely,
and as heroic and inspiring as I thought that they would be.
Yeah,
I still believe that you shouldn't meet your heroes, not because they'll disappoint you, but because you'll disappoint them.
Well, that's down to you, Winston. Come on.
Yep. Well, that's been my experience.
Can I just say something to any Mumford haters that winging a 15-minute song in front of tens of thousands of people couldn't be more rock and roll. So anyone who says they're not rock and roll, eat your words. Now we're going to go into your album, but before we do, there's one more thing which I want to talk to you about, which is this tour that you've got coming up, which I presume will be your biggest tour ever. I read that you've got 800,000 tickets up on sale, and we're helping you to sell them at Virgin.
Yeah.
And I wanted to.
Not that many left. There's not 800,000 still on sale.
Absolutely. I
There
know
was
you.
at one moment.
you're gonna sell the whole thing out. I know. But here was a heartwarming thing that I saw. Your tickets are like 50 quid.
Yeah.
And you're not doing that Fleetwood Mac, Taylor Swift thing, which frankly makes me want to puke up on my shoes when you're charging fans 170 quid for a ticket.
It's more complicated than that. It's been a bit of a battle, and we've always tried to keep our tickets down because we want everyone to come to our shows. Ticket prices down, sorry. And but it's changed even in 3 years, which is when the last album came out. Everything's ticket prices have ballooned. They've gone. Well, I don't know what the average is now, and we're trying to keep it about. Do you know more about this?
No, I just think that there is a sweet spot, isn't there, where like we can't completely control it. I know where you were going with that, but I think it's our theory was not to try and make music just for people that can afford it and make it as affordable as possible. But the as possible bit is a really important counterpoint to that.
Of course.
And I think that's
50
what we're
quid
saying.
You're saying that's to me that's expensive to go to a gig.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
And
that's what it.
The problem is that if we put it any cheaper, then basically it ends up being more anyway, because the tickets do end up just getting onto a whole different market.
Yeah.
And that's been an interesting challenge that we've tried to meet head on. It's a weird situation.
It's not really that feasible, particularly with our new stage. We're doing a sort of take on In the Round, where we've got a stage like a halfway line. I don't know how else to describe it, but it kind of goes across the centre, but up into the seats as well.
So this is the groundbreaking bit.
Yeah.
Because I was going to take you up on that, because lots of people have done In the Round, and I was thinking, are they going to be in jetpacks? What are they? It is jetpacks, isn't it? Say it's jetpacks.
How'd you know?
Could be, that's a good idea. The ticket prices might go up to 60 quid.
Well, you can have that one for free.
It is the ticket thing. It's a minefield, and we spend so much time thinking about it and discussing it in meetings, and it's because of secondary, as Ben says, and all that stuff. Plus, inflation, like ticket prices generally going up. What other bands are charging? What's normal? What's affordable? Like, it's really difficult to get right. We're trying new things. We were quite strict on ourselves to keep prices at a certain level, and also to make it pretty flat across the board, and now we're trying to expand that and have more different prices in different areas, because it's not been perfect. We don't know. We haven't found the perfect solution yet to it. Not sure anyone has.
Well, it's looking good to me. You're one of the biggest bands in the world, and your tickets are around 50 quid. And Taylor Swift, who's one of the biggest artists in the world. No,
do you say artists or artists?
No, I can't say artists, because she's done some really cool things.
Agreed.
Really cool things. And I don't want to disappear down the wormhole of cool things that Swiftie has done. But But 170 quid, or Fleetwood Mac, 170.
Is that
quid.
the cheapest price?
I think it's 140 to 170, something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
That's expensive.
yeah, that's ridiculous. That's a festival, to my eyes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But okay, like I say, let's.
probably has
We
her
could literally
reasons.
talk about this for 2 hours.
Yeah, we really
She
could.
has a reason. You should interview
Yeah.
her about it. She might.
Okay, let's get into your record now. So track 1 is a track called 42. There's a moment. I've got little notes on each song here that I'm going to share with you. There's this moment where it strips down to almost like a school or church organ, which I thought was very. It triggered. It was very emotional for me, and it kind of throws forward to Guiding Light. Lyrically, it's almost like a tease. Was it written as a first song then, in order to do that?
Yeah, the day we finished writing that song, it felt immediately like both an album and a set opener. And sometimes songs just feel like that. We toyed with different names for it actually along those lines, whether it was like prelude or intro, but those quite didn't feel it did it justice. So we ended up concluding, because I had a couple of different writing perspectives on it, and we couldn't agree on the lens to put the song title through, which shouldn't be that big a deal. But it was for some reason on this song, and we ended up calling it 42 because it's the 42nd song we've ever released.
Ah, okay. Okay, simple as that.
Simple
and it's an
as.
epic crescendo.
Yeah, it kicks off. Well, because we like to sort of like, I think there's something about it's like the opening credits of a film, isn't it? It's like let's lay our, like, what's it called? Set the stall.
Set the stall, yeah.
Set the stall out, and that's what this song is. And it's cool. It's the one song that actually carries some of the recordings that we did at Electric Lady rather than all the stuff at the church, because we did keep little bits from other cities and we carried them into the studio, but this, and 95% of this album was made with Paul, and Paul takes it on. But there was, I think the organ that you're referencing was some of the stuff that we kept from Hendrix's studio in New York.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, gosh, that must have. Can you feel the history seeping off the wall kind
You
of
really
thing?
can. I mean, it's just his apartment. It was where he used to live, on the very top floor, Studio D at Electric Lady, rather than like the all bells and whistles basement studio. This is, you know, you're working up there and then you step out onto the roof, which has been there for, obviously it's just the roof of the building, but you feel like the decades of artists that have passed through there. And we actually ended up going back to that studio and mixing the record with Tom Elmhurst. So it was nice full circle to have the track that opened the album also be the same place that we ended up finishing it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Gosh, I'm jealous. I'd love to feel the vibes in that room. Track 2 we're on now, which is your big single, Guiding Light. What an earworm this song turned out for me. It really got under my skin, and we are of course hammering it on Virgin Radio. But it sounds like classic, what I would call classic Mumfords.
That's kind of what Winston said. Yeah, major advocate for this song.
Yeah, I mean, it's now occurring to me that there's a link, but I've heard I hear the electronic sides within it more, that's what jumps out at me more. But I think it's a song, and I push very hard for it to be a single because I think it opens its arms very broadly. So, and Mumford & Sons is an invitation. We love people. We want people involved, and we have a lot of people involved with the band itself, but we love gigs and we want people to come and get, I don't know, come to the Mumford & Sons experience, whatever it is called. It's not called that. And this song, I think it is that. It's an invitation. Why were you against it as a single?
No, I was up for it. It was actually quite hard. I mean, we didn't go into this process trying to pick singles out, but we haven't ever had that, and we don't actually have anyone from a record label A&Ring us in a traditional sense. So we always have to kind of pick the pick the singles after the fact, and this one just, for the reasons Winston's just saying, it's like it came to be. But actually, we were kind of approaching each song like it could be or might be or should be a single, as it were. It's a weird
that's a good
concept,
point.
single.
And now every song is, because of streaming. Like every song has to be that. There's no, you can't really chuck in filler like you used to be able to.
That's an interesting point, actually.
Yeah. Well, although I think having pushed for it so hard, I'm not sure. Did I push for it hard? Because if it doesn't go well, I don't want to be blamed for it. 'Cause it is actually pretty difficult to choose those things. That's why you get. That's why we need.
I know, but
labels.
The confidence is helpful. I think someone putting all their weight behind a song is helps some of the second guessing sometimes. I remember it happened on Little Lion Man. We weren't even sure whether to put that song on that album, and Winston was like, "No, we're definitely putting that song on the album. People are going to love it." Okay, it was like a multi-week conversation that ended up sort of giving in, and I don't know, maybe you're an A&R.
Yeah, Winston, you've obviously got good ears, very good ears, and you're an A&R man in the making. How nice to have your A&R man in the band.
Yeah,
so let's move on to track 3, Woman. And I put here on my notes, departure in sound. Sounds like you're expanding your Mumford's vibe. At this point, I had no idea that Paul Epworth was involved, but of course now it's like a jigsaw fitting in there. It's really making sense.
Well, this song is very much the Paul Epworth song. I think he heard it and was like, ooh, I want to do something with that. And it was late one night, and this happened quite a lot throughout the album making process. And it's what we grew to call the crazy genius mode, which is when he's sort of at the computer, he gets Riley McIntyre was an engineer on there, he goes, Riley, get out of the way, and he goes in front of the computer and he starts dragging things across the screen, and then he goes over to the desk and like turning different bits up and going like this, and then he'll look over to us, sort of looking and sitting on the sofa, kind of like, oh, is he okay? And he'll go like questioning, like, is this all right? But not really looking for an answer, just sort of like going,
we've got to go back to the future, boys. It's your kids.
Exactly, totally like that, exactly like that. And then we get back to this, and so the first night with Woman, he spent like 6 hours just doing that whole routine. And I think people eventually like left. And when I went to the room next door, where there was like a window into that room, so I could see he was still doing that. And I think you can hear it in the song. Like there's an electronic approach to acoustic instruments on that song. Mm-hmm. So there's sidechain banjos, really heavily treated. There's a lot of percussion, but there's a lot of electronic sounding percussion, which is turning into a little tricky live. That's an Epworth special. Yeah,
your front of house guy is going to have a job, isn't he, with this record? I really noticed it, actually, that there were some really cool sounds that sounded like they were organic, but then very heavily produced.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you say, sidechain. I guess that is Eppo just going in, isn't it?
Totally, and there are organic origin sounds. I think that was important to him, because I think he, as much as other producers, sort of assume that that's a through line that they have to carry on, however much they're going to go on a journey with it. I think he was like, well, you guys all play instruments, so what have you got for me? And then we can mess around with it as much as you want. Rather than he wasn't like he was making beats and we'd come and just perform on top. He was forcing us to go on his journey. And kind of find that new way of making sounds ourselves.
It was helpful as well, because actually when we finished World of Mind, or when we started, we were always writing songs, but when we passed the writing song stage and into treatment, like how do we treat these songs, which was a couple of years ago now, we were like, well, what instruments do we use? And we weren't at all like scared to go back to the acoustic instruments, but we were kind of didn't want to just do what we'd already done on acoustic instruments, because that was boring to us. And so we always in our mind we wanted to make these acoustic instruments, use them but make them sound like they've not sounded before, or like we'd not heard them sound like before. And we didn't know quite what that meant, how that would end, but that is exactly what happened. I'm thinking out loud a little bit now, sorry, but that's exactly what Epworth did with those things, with with crazy genius nights like that. She's making those old instruments sound different. It's cool, I think.
Yeah, it's working. It is really working. I love this new sound, this new vibe that you've got. But having said that, track 4, Beloved, we're back to what I would call a classic Mumford's. I think what anyone would call a classic Mumford sound on that one, right?
I think instrumentation-wise, for the kind of the key point, I agree with you, but you should hear the demo to where it's got to. I think that what we realised is that there was a rhythmic element to be brought out of this song that would really give it a uniqueness. I've spoken to Marcus about this a bit because Marcus wrote that song and the demo form was very two-step, had that kind of that classic, like, yeah, I guess train track rhythm. But where we ended up going with it, and the polyrhythms in it, I think talks more to some of the influence we got from our work with Baba Mal. Some of the stuff that, I mean, you should talk to Paul about that song, because I think he hears it as like Steve Reich, not like classic Mumford & Sons. And it's interesting that it can feel familiar and fresh, and that feels consistent across this album. But yeah, Beloved, it's interesting. I think people's reaction to it has been pretty visceral. We've played it to a few people already, and they are. It certainly makes people stop in a way that I think for the rest of us who heard that demo for the first time, as happens throughout the record when we're playing each other different songs that we've written in a very kind of private moment, you can get people just to stop for a second and pay attention. And it's this felt that I remember very specifically the moment Beloved was brought into the studio, and it was it's just an emotional track.
Well, it's another crescendo track, isn't it? And it's hard not to tweak the emotions with a big crescendo. There's nothing like a crescendo to really sort of get you going, isn't there?
Yeah, you just get into it, don't you? I think a natural crescendo is just as you kind of, it's almost mantric. You get into that vibe, and then you start playing it together, and a lot of that stuff came naturally. What Winston was saying earlier about how we used to arrange songs in that pub environment was, you know, you go back to a chorus, and by the third time you're playing it, it feels like you are more engaged in it naturally. You know, it's not like you're trying to build crescendo in. It just, it's just what happened for like centuries.
Yeah. So, on to track 5, The Wild. What a beautiful start. Absolutely tender, beautiful start. And the build is superb. And you've gone orchestral on this one. This is full on.
This is, this is kind of introduction to Sally Herbert, who's the string arranger. First time for us working with her, and she's been incredible. She's worked with Paul a lot over the years. I guess
credit to Marcus though, because so that song, I think Marcus just set up a studio. I might get this details wrong, but he set up a studio on his farm, and I think he'd just finished it, or it was finally usable, and he was like, okay, I'm going to write a piece of music using every instrument in this studio. So even though Sally is exceptionally talented and had a creative input on the record, I think on this song, she just elevated what Marcus had written, right?
Yeah.
And it's so that's everything in his studio is on that piece.
He's got an orchestra in there. Here's the cows, here's the sheep, here's the orchestra. But I mean, epic knob up to 11 on this track.
Epic knob all the way up.
So I've got to ask, like, when you play live, are you going to have a string set? Are you going to have like an orchestra? Are you going to?
That's a night we're going to rehearse next week, and we're all pretty worried about it. We don't know how we're going to do it, but I love that song can sit on a record with Woman, like the electronic song, well, more electronic-y song. It's
good.
I'm very proud of this record because I think there's a pretty big breadth of sounds and styles and things going on, and this is definitely the far right? of like the classical Ennio Morricone type side of thing, and then
So well, I guess remains to be seen. Either Ben, you're going to have a hell of a job recreating all of this via keyboards, or you're going to have to go through the expense of hiring a lot of people to scrape a lot of strings.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be the former. We can't really do that across all the different cities.
Not at 50 quid a ticket, no.
Maybe Taylor Swift's got a orchestra. Fair enough. Actually, that's a pretty cheap ticket if she's got an orchestra.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, on to track 6 and October Skies, and we come back to another classic Mumfords. This one, slightly mournful, I thought.
Yeah, it is a bit mournful, this song. This was a relatively straightforward song to lay down. I think the bulk of it was kind of an afternoon and an evening. But it's rootsy. It's interesting, like, I guess here, where we are, track 6.
We're at 6, yeah.
And I think there was an element of familiarity that we knew we wanted to, or that it felt good to be back home in that sound, and there's something about it that feels very familiar, but there's also elements of this song that we wouldn't ever have dared to go to previously, even way back at the beginning. There's, I think, treatments. We had this thing that Paul encouraged us to try out, which was basically a harmonizing engine that was inside Pro Tools, inside the equipment. And on October Skies, we were playing in some of those harmonic elements that gave it just that slight colour of like the modern twists, because the writing is very choral, but the twist is important to us. Like, we're not purists and we're not traditionalists. If anything, we consider this album, October Skies, and any other song on it, to be as contemporary as it gets. But it's hard because I think we write in quite like a traditional format, verse chorus format, and so yeah, I suppose that I take your point that it sounds familiar because you can hear acoustic guitars and pianos and big ideas being laid out with melodies and stuff. But apart from that, this feels like it really naturally nestles in the heart of this record, which is why we put it where we did. Also features this wonderful singer called Yebba on it. I don't know if you've come across Yebba in other guises, but she's an amazing singer from the States, and she came in for a day and added a colour that, again, we hadn't really ever played with before, which is female vocals, adding additional high harmonies and a different kind of just angle on stuff.
Yeah, it's just another colour, isn't it?
It is, and she features at the end of this record, and you hear her a couple of other times throughout, but yeah.
Track 7, Slip Away. You do love a good crescendo, don't you?
Well, crescendo-y, this one. So crescendo-y.
I imagine the waveform of it. It just looked like an old-fashioned trumpet, like whoa, like that. But yeah, there's a formula here. There's almost like a recurring theme of like real epic crescendos happening. Like,
it doesn't start that intimate though, does it? I mean, I feel like...
Yeah, I think... I'm not sure I fully agree. I think this one, like, it starts pretty big and just goes slightly bigger.
And then goes... Oh, okay. Okay.
So there's actually a slight crescendo.
Okay, all right.
Although it certainly is, we agree it's a crescendo. This song, we said it earlier, we tried a few songs with Epworth before committing, and actually this is the first one that worked, where it all clicked into place, and we were like, oh yeah, we love where this is going. We didn't know where it was going. And although we didn't fully finish it, it also ended up being the song that we worked on last, because we added the bit of drums at the end, was the last thing we recorded. So that's for me, that song sort of represents the album in several ways. And I do hear more of the older stuff in this, but I think this is going to be awesome live. And this is the song I'm most excited to play live.
Really?
Yeah, it's just massive, and it's just, yeah, I'm very excited.
Moving on then to Rose of Sharon, track 8. And what do we have here? A slowed down hip hop beat.
What?
What? So that's got to be Epworth, steering that, I'm guessing.
No, this is Ben. This was, Ben and Marcus, I guess. You were not happy. We had a version of this, and Ben was like, "Nope, it's not good enough." And you're not. None of you are pushing yourselves far enough. You got to keep going. And it was like, what was it? It was another late night. And what instrument? The log drums.
The log drums on the
You're
DX7.
just pushing for it, and then once that came through,
yeah,
it fell into place a bit more.
We found that halftime finally in that groove, because it. I don't know. It just feels like this felt like an important song to kind of stretch ourselves a bit when it came to what we were about, and it was an exciting song to work on, but it was a really tricky one as well. Like we did a lot of different versions of it. Basically, in my mind, you crank it up and you put the windows down, and it's about as much of a summer, like, lean back in your car seat song as you can get. And some of my favourite moments growing up were those when you, like, I remember a good friend of mine, Drew, growing up, would come over and it would just be the latest release of whatever band he was into at the time, but it would be something that he wanted to share with me, and so we'd get in his, like, whatever it was. Marcus did the same actually a bit when we were teenagers, and I just feel like this might be that song that people can kind of, it feels like it puts a smile on your face, and it's a love song, you know, in it, but a kind of unexpected love song. And we are all, in, you know, to different degrees, have been kind of enjoying various bits of hip hop and grime as it's permeated through being the biggest sound in culture right now, and I think it's been impossible to ignore it. And yeah, like, in the studio referencing, we have actually done it previously, but referencing just the sonic values of that, you know, just the kind of either sampled beats from sort of old school hip hop, or doing, you know, really thinking about the sparseness of, like, modern, like, there's bits of it that's just trap. I remember when we were, one of the discoveries on what we ended up, the version that we ended up putting on the album, was that we just started muting. It would be like, there'd be just this constant, and then we'd just start muting it after a bar, and then muting it after 3 bars, and so that you would continue the riff, the melody in your head. It was always implied, and you'd only get it every now and then, so it doesn't become repetitive. And actually, space is something that I think is, you know, we're in an interesting era of music, but it's something that wasn't kind of all over the 90s and early noughties music in a way that it is now. Sometimes you can just have a solid bass line, a beat, and a good melody. And that this track, I think we basically found it by kind of stripping it out a bit.
It takes maturity, I think, to do that.
Yeah.
With you know, when a lot of people will start producing and they just throw everything but the kitchen sink in.
Right, exactly.
But I think, you know, after a while, you discover that less is more, actually. And how nice that you've managed to, like, as you implied there, you're reflecting what's happening in culture, but it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb.
Right, yeah.
It just sounds very, it still sounds very like Mumford and Sons. You know, you've got this progressive kind of vibe that you're gleefully in, but it doesn't sound like you're faking it. It doesn't sound like, it all feels very honest.
I think we're more like a sponge than a mirror. So, like, what's happening around us, we don't kind of just chuck it back out there. So I don't think you can hear sort of the direct influences of some of the acts like Octavian that we've been loving listening to. You can't hear it, but when listening to some of these great artists around at the moment, it does find its way in much more intrinsically. even in the writing sometimes, I think. And we'd like to kind of soak all of that up between us.
Well, speaking of progressive Mumfords, we get to Picture You now. Wow. This is like, and we talked about having the maturity to strip something down. This is so beautifully stripped and such great production. When I listened to it again, I had no idea that it was Paul. I just thought, oh my God, I love this. It's more electronic, but again, it doesn't sound weird. You've really...
I think there's a lot about Picture You that's true to the demo. And Winston will speak more to the song, but I'll just tell you a quick story about it, because I remember getting a demo from Win on an email, as a lot of these songs started their life as an MP3 demo on an email from each members of the band. And I just got to California. I was there for, I can't remember, there for a few days. And I guess you must have been in Nashville. And he sent over this song. And I got in a car, and the car's an amazing place to just hear something for the first time. It's amazing, like, medium. And I played this, and it was like, just even with those opening chords, and then, yeah, the story, basically I remember sending a note when I finished driving, like whatever it was, 20 minutes down the road, just being blown away. And I think there's been probably the most progressive or expansive writing has come from what has been quite, I guess, isolated writing trips by yourself, right? And this was one of those moments.
Yeah, I think, I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we all have different ways of doing writing, and because, like you say, we are a sponge, and there are some moments, like, where personally I'm a sponge, but I kind of need personally, and we're not all like this, I need to be alone a lot of the time to like clear and to make a lot of errors. That's mainly, it's like I need to get through like 100 bad ideas to get to one good idea. So I'm just going through chucking tons of ideas down, which I can't do in front of people because I just feel guilty that I'm wasting their time a little bit. But we're not all like that, and there's sometimes when I feel like I can write differently. And you're very good at collaborating, great within the band collaborating, but also I know you do a lot of stuff outside of the band doing that, which has always been a disaster whenever I've tried to co-write. Well, not always, but usually. Yeah, and I think everyone's been pushing themselves progressively as well with the writing. And, yeah, I'm not sure how. I don't know if I hear this progressive.
It came quite late. This song, didn't it?
Because for me, I hear like Eurythmics or something, or like that was what I was listening to quite a lot of and they're progressive, but I guess now that was 20 or 30 years ago.
But I'm using the word progressive in the context of Mumford & Sons.
Right.
You know, not in music as in general. A bit, but you know, that you have a sort of a vibe about you that people expect, and this is not that. But it sounds really natural at the same time. It's more electronic than you.
It's hard, I guess it's probably hard for us to gauge what people expect of us, really. I think we... Yeah, I'm not sure. Yes, that's how...
I think it's fair to say that
you've got a better idea of that than us, maybe. But yeah, but this is definitely even the instrumentation is not something we've done a lot of, which is, I guess, really like affected Paul Epworth style. Took some banjos. There's like 8 banjos on there, but all of them sound completely. And that's because he's going mental, chucking them through modulars and having these late nights going crazy genius mode. But then there's also pretty stripped back pop, hip-hop-y percussion drums track, right?
Yeah. I love when the drums kick in on this. It's such a release of moment.
That's actually very exciting. Eddie, this is the first time I play drums on a Mumford & Sons recording.
Really?
Yes, that's right.
First time?
It kind of slipped through the net. I don't know what happened.
I was very excited about it. I didn't say anything for a long time. No one realised that the drums that come in were the same ones from the demo, and no one questioned it. I kept stum. And
we've always had kind of it's always been
anyone but Win on the drums is the like band policy.
Yeah. A band policy, exactly. But we somehow have broken it, and
I can't
pretty
remember.
happy about it. I just said, again, I forgot, and I just complimented it as my favourite moment of drums.
On that bombshell.
It's happened.
Yeah.
I can't even clap, so this is remarkable that I'm playing.
Brilliant. So,
And
where are we?
When you say that, did you? Because that song is a medley with the song after "Darkness Visible," right? I don't know if that's what you were referring to. So,
Well, I mean, I was going to get on to Darkness Visible, so which again sounds like you're way out your comfort zone, but in a good way.
Yeah.
I love this middle part of the record. I was really, it really resonated with me. There's no Marcus on there. There's like a sampled voice that sounds like Harrison Ford, but probably isn't. That probably isn't Harrison Ford. And it goes, forgive me for using this word, mental.
it goes mental.
It goes absolutely.
That's the intention.
Mental.
There's no better word for the intention of that song. That is exactly what it's supposed to be.
Well,
mental.
Yeah, chicken oriental.
In the little-
radio rental.
Radio rental.
But
I mean it literally.
well, okay. Well, even
Yeah,
better.
but that's what the song is.
Even better. What
Even better.
It is a mental health thing, or
Well,
it is a.
You couldn't say it better with mental, and I think that's what Picture You spells it out. They're linked, those two songs.
Yeah.
And they're connected literally and in terms of theme and stuff. And I think Picture You colours that in and then does the work of explaining it. I made a mistake in another interview trying to explain that song, it's turned out to be way. I was like, just listen to the song. That says it. Well, I can't describe it any better. And that song was so. After the demo, we would then. Ben started playing these chords, and the original version of Darkness Visible is 19 minutes long, I think, or 17 minutes long.
Wow.
And
which was already an edit down, I think, of
That was
like a
already an edit.
multi-hour jam one night, and it was fun because sometimes it's something that we haven't ever expressed publicly. I guess this sound, this sort of more kind of, I hate the word jam, but like the idea of us just making music together in a very free sense. But there's a window here into that, I think, and we were just on a level, and the majority of what you can hear in Darkness Visible was the four of us just in a room playing with each other. It was like free improv, like free composition. But I think we're all in the right sort of mindset that felt like it represented what we were trying to achieve, but we were doing it without even thinking about it. And I think that was I guess another moment that Paul felt equally excited to be working with us as we were with him. I think he saw something about what we were doing which was entirely unintentional. We were just kind of, I guess, letting go a little bit. And,
yeah, I'll say. I mean, just going back to the word mental, in the context of Mental and Mumford and Sons, has that ever been said before? I mean, that's that's a good place to be.
It is a good place to be. I think it takes a bit of. I think that I'll explain it in the sense of the album title, but there's something about this record that has us facing up to some stuff that we've never wanted to face up to previously, thematically, lyrically, sonically. We're pushing. I think we're beyond what the safe comfort zone, right? The kind of what we've described internally as the kind of the cocoon of the river delta, right? Which is the river up the river stream, and then when you're getting down to the delta, you're heading towards the unknown, and there's something that gets us right onto that kind of cliff edge with this song, but we're not scared, and I think that's what's changed. I think that maybe previously wasn't that we were fearful, but we weren't willing to find out what was on the other side of that, and this time I think we felt good enough, we felt grounded enough and strong enough to take it on, and that thematically comes up a few times, and there wasn't ever a question in our mind whether this was going to be a key moment in the belly of this record. Like this felt core, and that's. I think the confidence that we had in doing that has spread into people being like, all right, we'll go on this journey with you, and that feels itself very liberating, that kind of positive feedback circle.
When I listened to this song, I just thought, oh my gosh, I've got to see these guys play, because I've never seen you play.
Right.
And when you mentioned earlier, there was a track that you said was the track that you look forward to playing the most.
Slip Away, yeah.
If I was in your band, this
I
is the
agree.
one that I would want to play the most.
I'm very excited. You're right. You're absolutely right. I'm very excited. The daunting thing about this song is how the hell are we? I don't know how we're going to play this live. Because we did not think about that at all in the studio. And
It
I'm
won't
totally
be the
with
same.
you.
It can't be the same. It's
Well-
going to be impossible to recreate this because so much of it was accidental.
But even to try and come up with something that
Yeah, you're right.
represents it in any way. What we have decided is that this is going to be the song with tons of pyro on. This is pyro mad. And we're going to rely on the pyro to do the work for us, hopefully. Everyone likes loud.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Oh, who doesn't love pyro? Wow. Okay. Well, it sounds like we could carry on talking about this song for ages. Actually,
This is probably my favourite as well. Oh, I don't know. I've got a lot of favourites.
It's absolutely the most mental, and like I say, I would love to play that live. That's just it's made me. I'm definitely going to come and see you now.
Wicked.
So let's move on to If I Say, and the orchestra and your string arranger gets another look in here.
She does, yeah.
Another crescendo, perhaps with this track. And I'm not saying this is not a bad thing. I love a crescendo.
We love.
We've
established that we love crescendos.
We are all crescendo fans, right? So yeah, you're back to that deciding whether you're going to have a string, whether to have strings when you play live.
Yeah, that's going to be tricky. But we did just figure out that it is possible to do this one in a version of it, just using keyboards and stuff. The first time we played it since releasing the track was just a couple of days ago, and we did bring a 12-piece for that performance.
Wow.
It was a bit like getting spoiled.
It was quite funny. We were in New Orleans, which is where we've just come from, doing Voodoo Festival, and we had the orchestra who turned up to rehearsals in Baton Rouge, very formal, everyone very polite and well dressed. And then we didn't see them the day of the gig, and they turn up and they've all got like the Mardi Gras beads and like face paint. I was like, oh, if in New Orleans this is not going to go well. Yeah. They were a bit tuny.
But yeah, no, it's. I think it felt the string palette was something that we'd never properly got into. We've had moments of strings across the other albums, but we had always arranged them ourselves, or been very controlling of if someone was arranging them. We weren't very good at collaborating on that stuff previously. But this song, I felt like it just the emotion that you get from a violin kind of you can't recreate it any other way.
And Wild Heart, to my ears, would be what people expect of you.
Sonically, I agree.
Yeah.
It's my favourite song Winston's ever written, because it doesn't. I feel lyrically it goes closer to the wire than maybe where we've gone. I mentioned before where I think that there's an honesty I feel on this record that is a transparent honesty, is less, and that you can really there's like a rawness and a nakedness.
It sounds to me like this is your most honest, heart on its sleeve record.
Well, I think if there's a theme to Mumford & Sons, or a concept, we're not a concept band, and we like concept bands and concept albums, but we're not that. But if there is a concept, it's honesty, and that's something we've always pursued. So I'm not sure this is more honest than anything else, but if it is classic Mumford in any way, it is because it's pretty brutally honest, maybe.
Okay, if I replace the word honest with the word open, is it your most open record?
I don't know what you mean by open.
Well, no, you're dealing with things that you were, witithout being
Oh, I see what you
fearful,
mean.
For me, I think it
trepidatious about dealing with, and you're
That's
now.
a
It sounds
question.
like that
Yeah.
you're dealing with things that perhaps were awkward to deal with.
But we need to wrap.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think Ben said this as well earlier, more articulately than I'll do it now. But we really pushed ourselves right to that line, right in writing, and that's something actually you can forget that. I go into the studio a lot, and I'm just and I'm not pushing myself. I'm not what do I need to sing? What do I that you can somehow I forget that still, and I think this collection of songs is, like you say, is open to the things most worth singing about.
We've got to wrap up, but let me just run through the last couple with you. So, Forever, you've got this combination of processed harmonies. Maybe this was the harmonizer thing that you were talking about. And the combination of that and the strings is weepy. It's so emotional. It really, really works. It sounded to me like an ender. It sounded to me like this is the end of the record.
Yeah.
But then you have the title track.
I know what we're doing. It's
We-
all over.
we actually, it's funny because we thought that as well, and we spent a lot of time working out how the hell to end this record, because I think both those songs could finish the record, and we decided to put both of them on.
It's a double ending.
It's a double ending.
A double ender.
It's a reprise then, I guess, the Delta, right?
Yeah. I mean, Delta, it felt, obviously, it
Not a
ended up,
reprise.
it ended up having to be,
It's like a conclusion or something.
yeah, but it had to be on the record.
Yeah.
And it came late in the game of all these songs. No, the kind of the time where the songs drop into the process is really important, because you start to become attached to where they would naturally sit. You know, you start to, whether or not it's spoken or it doesn't, people would make a comment about, oh, that feels like it would be an early in the album song, and that's, you know, even someone saying that feels like it'd be on the album was taking songs off like a long list bench and slotting them in, and then after a while they become definite. So the sort of the Delta moment coming later, and also that was about when we had concluded that this album should be called Delta. It was all kind of posthumous, you know, it's like all happening after the fact. And I remember when Marcus wrote that lyric, which really felt like it summed up kind of what I was getting at, which, you know, where the river runs into the sea, which is like the, you know, the moment before it all kicks off into our version of an indie band wig out at the end.
Yeah,
of it.
yeah. I almost go, you say indie band, it almost goes U2 at the end for me.
Right. I don't know, like it was certainly fun to get it. It felt like that is a good representation of us in lots of ways. You know, if a song was a nutshell, that's it.
It sounded to me like a reassurance, like right at the end, you've gone, it's okay, we're still here.
Yeah.
It's the Mumfords that you know and love. I know we've gone off on one here, there, and everywhere on this record, but like, don't worry, we're still here.
And there will be more. I think that's the other thing, is that we felt we went on quite a journey with this album, and that sense that maybe at the end, that maybe comfort that you feel, and like the reality is that we feel more confident than ever that we're going to be making lots more albums, and it's great to be that like sure. There's a lot of like uncertainty, and to be that sure that we're going to be doing this and we're going to be going out on tour, because we've just intentionally announced a run of dates that we've never. It wasn't really about the volume of tickets, it was about the number of shows, and we've never announced that many shows at once, because it's like, again, we're just saying like, this is what we want to do, and it maybe took us a few years to be able to say that out loud to each other and then to the world, that this is like, it's cool, like we're here to stay, and we're gonna make lots of albums.
Fantastic. Ben, Win, thanks so much for holding our hands.
Thank you for your wonderful questions, and you clearly
Absolutely.
listened and really paid attention. It means a lot to us.
Oh, well, real
spent a lot
pleasure.
of time.
It's all about the music. Virgin Radio.